Hello Voices, my name is Joe Troy and I'm a multi-award winning voice actor, audio producer and host of the VOICEOVER'S audio adventure podcast, a bi-weekly show where I learn about the voiceover and audio industry and share with you all of the stories, tips and tricks along the way. Hello and welcome to another adventure. The number one thing you need as a voice actor is somewhere to record, and it's one of the first questions that I struggled with in the beginning of my career. Which mic do I get? Where can I record? What is a good sound versus a bad sound, and etc, etc, etc. Not to mention, do I need to rent a studio or buy a booth for my little flat? Well, these are not only questions that I struggled with, but things that you were struggling with on a day-to-day basis. Although there isn't a one-size-fits-all regarding sound, mic setups, etc., most of us should have a basic understanding of what is a good versus bad sound. Well, today's adventure is about recording setups, and more specifically, a cool product that I came across not so long ago. I'll be speaking with Richard Holmes, the creator of VOXBOX, a foldable, portable, storable sound booth. Richard may be the savior for beginners who are looking for a quick setup, someone with a small space, or even seasoned voice actors who want to be able to record quickly on the go. We'll be talking about his sound booth creation in more detail, the inspiration, how it's made, and the best way to use it. Let's go. Right then, well, hello Richard, how are you?
Very good. Nice to meet you properly.
I know. I'm not going to lie. We've been speaking before. We have been speaking before, but the world of audio, Yeah, so today I'm really excited for today's episode, talking about the amazing product that you have, a bit about sound, and just everything really about you, yourself, and everything else. I like to get the guests to introduce themselves. So if you'd like to go for it.
I will do that. So my name is Richard Holmes, and I've been a film producer in the UK, independent film producer for about 30 years. I've made films that have been successful. I've made films that have been not successful. But I'm from sort of the indie side. So I've never worked for a studio. I'd like to have done, but I never worked for a studio, never worked for a broadcaster or anything. So I've always found my own stories, development into scripts, raised the money, put the films together as a package, made them, and then delivered them to the market. So it's an interesting job, full spectrum, difficult, hard to get things going. I've made successes like God's Own Country, The Ritual, long time ago, Shooting Fish, Waking Ned, Eden Lake, films which have done fine, some of which have got a good reputation, I'm very proud of. And the other ones I won't mention, because why would I do that? But I have got no, just to be very clear, I am not an audio specialist or an audio expert. However, part of my job as a producer is to sit in the final mix and to, hear the sound design and see that the dialogues are clear and make sure that the audience will be able to understand what was being said in the scene. So I've always had a keen interest in it, but no expertise whatsoever. So that's me.
Leading on from that, what was the inspiration behind creating this product, and what were the problems that you or people that you knew were facing that you felt like, I need to figure this out?
It's two parts to it, really. The first part is that it's a lockdown story, inevitably. During lockdown, I started to listen to podcasts for the first time. And I noticed, even me, I could tell the difference between a BBC podcast and sort of a more indie one. And that there were real differences in audio. And sometimes it was, you found yourself leaning in to sort of hear something that, that wasn't very well recorded. But I didn't think about, that was just sort of peripheral. What really happened is my daughter, who was at university, came back from her music degree from lockdown and needed to record. She's a singer-songwriter, needed to record her songs in this room, which is now my workshop because she's grown up and moved out. But it's a bright room. There's no curtains. There's plaster walls. There's not much furniture. And it was, I didn't know even the term at that point, but she said, it's a bit reverby, Dad. Could you do something? So I built her a very big, I'm a bit handy, but I'm not, an inventor or anything. So I built her out of thin plywood, a big, heavy audio treated box. So it had some audio foam in it and some blankets and stuff. And it was big enough to put a laptop in her, which she was recording on, and a mic in, and she could sort of put some paper and stuff in it. And it worked. It killed the reverb, and it had a significant impact on the noise as well. But she hated it. It smelt, and it was huge in the room. And she resented it, basically. But So when she went back to university, I just threw it in the skip. It was huge, so I had to throw it in the skip. Weighed 80 pounds. Never thought about it again.
Yeah.
But I noted that it actually had worked. The job. And then sort of lockdown came back again, and my son. Well, I know we sound like the Von Trapps, but my son wrote a book. He actually did write a novel. Like some people say, "Oh, I'm going to write a book," and he went, "Well, I'm actually going to write a book," and he did. And my wife, who's an actress, said, "Well, I'll record it for you. We'll work together and edit it, and then I'll record it." So I'd thrown away the big box, which no one wants to sit in anyway, and so I had to make a smaller version, and I made it out of acoustic foam, proper acoustic foam, gaffer tape. But what it had was two. One is it was tabletop, and the second one is I just by random luck, the way I cut it, it folded. It folded into a kind of slab. And they hated it as well. It was wobbly and it was still a bit smelly. It used to fall apart all the time. But it functioned. So when that book was finished, I kind of didn't think about it anymore, other than in the back of my head, these two things had utility. They'd actually done what they were intended to do. They just weren't products. And I went on a weekend to go and see I'm 60, so a bloke I've known for 50 years, became a very high-end industrial corporate interior designer. And he used to do like boardrooms for Apple and Microsoft, proper boardrooms where they have sound treatment. And I talked to him about my funny box. And he said, "Have you seen this material called PET felt?" And I went, "No." So he took me up to his room where he had this stuff. He cut it in such a clever way that it could turn into a box and sort of push into a window outlet, so it could like block out the light and the sound. And it was like it was a Damascene moment. It was like, oh my God, this is if I can make it out of this. Anyway, he was really influential on me because he's a proper designer. He built me a little kind of model how to do it. He introduced me to a prototyper in Bristol who cut PET felt. And over about a year, I developed it into the box, which is fundamentally what I'm sitting in now. The prototype developed. And then I had to get into manufacturing. So we talked about, what are the problems? The problems were the hinges. So when I got into prototyping, because the box folds up, and you can go on the website and you can see it kind of popping up and coming down again. It's quite, even if I say so myself, and random luck, it's quite clever. But it really relies on the hinges being almost invisible. So they're very flat and very neat. But I freaked out that they were so finely cut that they would just fall apart. Got introduced to Intertech, which is a company. So all your sofas, all your carpets, they're tested by Intertech, and they do this thing called a rub test where they rub it with a machine like 10,000 times. So they just test materials, and they were absolutely brilliant. They did a long conversation with me, long interview. I sent them 4 hinges, and they put one in a vise, and they tore it apart, and they measure how many Newton strength it takes to tear it apart. And then they put the fresh one in, bend it 500 times and tear it apart. They put another fresh one in, bend it 1,000 times and tear it apart. And it had a negligible loss of strength after 1,000 turns. I said, look, even I'm a bit surprised by this. And we are as well. And I said, look, what's this about? Because I'm delighted, but really? And they went, we think it's because it's felt. And if your mum or dad used to felt anything, like you can get felt toys, you can get felt hats, and the difference between soft felt and hard felt is it's just being knitted and knitted. This stuff, PET felt, is needle knitted, 1 million needles at it, and then it's heat treated, so it's incredibly tough. So their theory was it was basically felting a bit more when they bent it, and so it actually didn't lose strength. It was a sort of continuous strength. So that was really, really just good to know. And then I got into manufacturing and I realized that if we cut it really cleanly, then it could be push fit. So there's no glue, there's no chemicals involved in it whatsoever. So fundamentally, the box, again, these things are just random, sometimes. It's quite a green product because PET felt is 60% recycled bottles. As I say, there's no glue, there's no chemicals, there's no fixings, there's nothing in the box that you have to kind of do when it turns up to you. There's no maintenance. You can clean it. It's a neat material, and it sort of saved my life many times. So the next stage was at, grand old age of 60, I had to learn how to manufacture, which I'd never done. I've made films, manufactured films, but that's kind of IP, to actually make a thing. And I met this amazing guy in Hong Kong, Brusco, and he's a manufacturing agent, and he's a very funny guy. And he was the one who brought me step by step through the process of getting something mass produced, which is very different to prototyping. And it was like a 6-month university course, and I learned an enormous amount from him.
How long was the prototype process? How many were there to get to the current stage?
I probably went through 5 quite big editions. where things really fundamentally changed, and I sort of, did scoops and corrugating and all sorts of stuff. And at one point, it was more of an oblong. It was more of like a shoebox shape rather than a cube. And that was, again, a revelation moment where I just cut the end off the oblong, and it turned into a cube, and it folded more neatly, and it was just better. So there were probably 5 or 6 iterations. And then I took the final prototype to Podcast Show 2023. And that's the first time that I took it out in public. Yeah. And honestly, well, because when you make anything, I mean, even your podcasts, I'm sure that you finish them and you go, oh, that's just, that works. And then someone hears it and you think, well, actually, you're hearing it for the first time. That's what I'm saying. So like when you see a film you've made for the first time with an audience. So, I've set it up in that Islington Design Centre and thought, fucking hell, this is a big place. Is this going to work? And I don't know if you've seen the little clip on the website of actors putting their head into it.
Yes.
Going, wow. So that was done when it was quite a junior prototype. And I thought, well, that's not going to work in a big room. And it was literally the same. People would put their head in and go, oh, wow. There's always that little kind of, wow. And it became known as the oh, wow effect. And it worked. And, I put it up and down probably 200 or 300 times during that weekend. Right. And I got a couple of people kind of skeptical about the price, which, believe me, is absolutely rock bottom because they're expensive to make, weirdly. But the effect was just electric. But at that point, it was still a prototype, and I was thinking about how to raise the money to actually make a few of them. So then from there to the next podcast show was basically the year of development of manufacturing. I've been through the prototype staging, and now it was like, how do I get hundreds made at a price?
You're an actor, voiceover. You want to travel on holiday, for example. You've got an audition that you need to do quickly. How much room would you need to set this up, and where would you put your equipment, etc.?
I would suggest that you don't try and do it next to a fridge, where actually that's not true. Rob B, who tested it, said it actually did kill his fridge in his kitchen completely. But if you're next to a railway line or a park, and you've got it's not. I mean, I'd be very clear about this. Not trying to oversell it. It's not an isolation booth. If you have a good permanent setup at home, your permanent setup will be better than VOXBOX. Now, VOXBOX could enhance a good setup. So I would suggest that you get into a relatively small room, you sit with your back to some curtains or a wardrobe of clothes, so you give it every chance. But because it's double skinned, you put it up yourself, because it's double skinned at the back, it's very good at killing most of the energy that comes out of your voice so it's mostly absorbed there, but there will be some reflections from the back. And so anything you can do to sort of help that, why not do it? If you want to, you can put it under a duvet. It would certainly make the duvet more comfortable. But in and of itself, if you look at Rob B's review, which is on my website under the testimonial tab, he puts it through his paces in his kitchen, and then he takes it into his what he describes as a semi-treated room. And he said, if you do this, you get a professional or near professional result, which is very heartening for me. And I would then what you've got to do, depending on what mic you've got and the sensitivity of the mic and what kind of interface you use and what kind of laptop you use, it does have, I think, you've seen it, it's got 2 holes, one for XLR and one for USB. So you can put things outside the box and bring a microphone in. If you're using an iPad for your script or whatever, then that'll be absolutely fine. I think it's probably then a matter of trial and error to find out where, for you, the ideal mic should be. The effect of VOXBOX, like any box, is you don't have to shove your head right in. As soon as once you breach the perimeter, you can be comfortable. You don't have to sort of, strain to get your head in, and then your voice won't sound very good anyway. But once you've worked it out where your mic is, and it's your VOXBOX, I would suggest you probably just mark the floor of the VOXBOX, so you know that when you put your mic there and your pop filter there and your interface there, that will always give you the same kind of result.
In terms of the size itself, are you looking for different sizes maybe in the future, or are you looking to keep it as is?
I built it because I thought if I can sit in it comfortably, I'm sort of relatively big. I'm 6 and a bit, and I weigh about 14, and so I'm a big-ish bloke. And I thought, so I built it for my shoulders. Obviously, if you're a rugby player or something, it'll still struggle. And I toyed in the prototypes with bigger and smaller sizes, and I chose this one. And it's always a risk. Again, you'll hear in the Rob B review, he's really pleased it's not smaller. He finds that the closer stuff is around the mic, it does this thing which I don't really understand, but called coloration. And he says this has a bit of coloration, but very little compared to those, those things that actually crowd the mic around. So he thinks, I'm not just saying this, that it's a good size. It's the right size to be. On a practical basis, if you make anything, you can't make many versions of it, because each one you have to have a minimum order that you order from the factory. So I don't think I'll change that. If I do, it would be incremental, and it would be something to do with packaging and couriering charges. But I think 60 by 60 seems to be good.
Okay. Well, before I let you go, what is the goal? Where do you want to be this time next year? What is the goal, the ambition?
Okay. The ambition, I come back to my day job, which is a film producer. So I've made films that have worked and films that haven't worked, and I've made money and I've lost money. And what I have come to realize, you've got to plan for success. So looking at the sort of de minimis, the basics is, I've made a first small batch. If I sell that and that's all the world really wants, then I've told myself, be happy. You'll get your money back, pay your pension fund back. Your wife won't divorce you, and it'll all be fine. Yeah. But my ambition is vaulting ambition. I think realistically, in a year, I hope to be a product that people recognize in the industry. So that people on film sets or kind of content, production, behind the scenes, people who are using stuff and have to have a quick environment, they go, oh, we've got one of these, and they like it. So it's in the BBC and it's in Channel 4 News and it's in ABC.
You want it to be a staple. You want it to be a staple in the audio industry,
Exactly. In my business of film, it's really weird how products work. You walk onto a set and someone's got I'm so old. I remember the first Steadicams. And it's like, what the fuck is that? People go, that's amazing. And now everyone's got one. They've got some kind of thing. So I know how quickly it can sort of become a standard product. And that's what I've got to try and do, is I've got to try and get out there and market it so that people go, oh, yeah, I've heard about this. It's great, rather than me having to explain the whole thing. So in a year, I would like to be in my second bulk batch, have ordered quite a few hundred and be chunking through those with the idea of then raising, some substantial capital and developing it as a brand that people go, oh yeah, like VOXBOX. I really admire what they've done with VOXBOX. It's a good brand, and that's what I think VOXBOX should be.
Well, Richard, I think you should be proud for what you're doing. It's a big, big challenge, and I must say you have created a really useful product that I definitely will be using, especially when I'm traveling.
Thank you, and keep feeding back.
Yeah, I will, 100%.
I honestly listen to everything. Just the last little anecdote. Initially I had 2 USB portholes in the sides, and someone, a voiceover artist went, it would be really useful if one of those was shaped for an XLR. I wouldn't have known that. I'm just not an audio person. So feedback is really good, and I just want to make it, if we go again, I can always tweak and improve on what we've got here.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm going to put your website, I'm going to put all the info. I'm going to put Rob's review on there because I think that will be very helpful, especially if people are thinking of purchasing. But like I said, keep using it. I'm going to keep telling people about it because it's very, very useful for people. And good luck with everything.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this.
So what did I take away from today's conversation? Although it is portable and flat packed, some may find it a bit large for their setup, as you need a tabletop to rest it on. This being said, there is currently talks of legs being added to the product so you can stand up to use it. So keep an eye on this and watch this space. Some may think the price is a bit much, even though it's at the cheapest it can be. I mean, if you're going to spend £300 on an item to record with, you would want it to be the finished article and not have to add more to the setup in order to get a good sound. So I wouldn't really recommend this to someone who's just starting out and doesn't understand sound. I would recommend this to someone who knows what their sound is. To someone who wants a little extra on the go, or someone more professional who wants it for meetings and wants privacy or just a better sound and wants that dead space. And finally, at the moment, there's several portable sound booths on the market. but I truly believe that this one is in a league of its own. It does what it says on the tin and that's it. You can't ask for more. Thank you, Richard, for your time and talking about VOXBOX. I will include your product details as always, so if any of you are interested, feel free to check it out. I'll also include a link to Rob B's in-depth review so you can have a listen and maybe that will help in your decision to purchase or not. As always, thank you everyone for listening, and be sure as always to like and share the episode with a friend. Until next time, bye.